Torej, kot je že Iztok napovedal, s prvo okroglo mizo, ki smo jo naslovili, zakaj področje usklajevanja plačanega dela in skrbi za otroke zadeva moške in zakaj je to pomembno za organizacije. Na tej okrogli mizi bomo govorili torej o usklajevanju, predvsem z vidika organizacij, z vidika podjetij, spregovorili bomo o vlogi vodstva, pogovarjali se bomo o izkušnjah in praksah iz Norveške, Nemčije in Slovenije. Ne gre tu, da iščemo primerjave, ampak predvsem, da vidimo, kakšne so različne prakse, različne izkušnje, glede na to, da so v bistvu vse te tri države iz povsem različnih socialnih, družbenih, kulturnih in zgodovinskih kontekstov. Pogovarjali se bomo dr. Mark Gertner, sociolog, ki trenutno sodeluje s poslovnim oddelkom na Berlinski šoli za ekonomijo in pravo, kjer vodi projekt Flagship, Flexible Work Models for Managers. Gospod torej Eugen Kvalheim, ki smo ga že spoznali, torej direktor Norveškega združenja delodajalcev Spekter in na prejšnjem delovnem mestu, kjer je pa vodil Konfederacijo poklicnih sindikatov. Skratka, bogate izkušnje iz obeh področij in pa seveda še gospa Sonja Šmuc, izvršna direktorica Združenja Manager, znotraj katerega se je dodatno specializirala za poslovno etiko in pa ženski menedžment. Zdaj, če začnemo kar na začetku, jaz bi začela pri Marku Gertnerju in bi vprašala, zakaj torej, naše izhodiščno vprašanje, zakaj je vprašanje usklajevanja plačanega dela in družine, zasebnega življenja pomembno za moške, kakšne spremembe, a zaznavate kakšne spremembe v zadnjih desetletjih v Nemčiji, predvsem v obdobju od 2007 naprej, ko vemo, da je v bistvu ste na področju starševskega dopusta so bile takrat, je bila konkretna sprememba uvedena in če lahko mogoče malo več o tem poveste.
Thank you very much, Chiva. First of all, for the invitation, also to Moitza and all the Peace Institute. We've been working together in projects, collaborating for like a bit more than 10 years now in EU projects, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be in Ljubljana again, a city which I really love and enjoy to be here. Thank you very much. And on the question, what changed in Germany and why is this question important for men as well? Viktor Seidler already told us a lot about how fathering changed and men's attitudes towards how to be a good father changed. That happens in Germany as well, very much. But there are also other things that might be important for men. As a non-father, it's also important for me to have a good work-life balance. Viktor was raising the topic of caring masculinity, something we have been working on for a couple of years now, and in the center of it, health issues, well-being issues are very important. Apart from like being a good father, it's really important to relate to my own emotions. That was part of the discussion we already had. And what we also see is that all over Europe, men live on average shorter lives than women do. I mean, it's cheap. It would be too easy to say it's all because of work relations that men work themselves down more than women do. That would be too easy. But I think somehow it is connected to the way how men live their lives. They endanger themselves to a certain extent. And that also has to do, that happens in work as well. They are really stressed out. They get ill. They are affected by many things in work. So the work-life issue is very important for men, also apart from being a good father and being having a good place in in families. Norwegian researcher, you know in Norway at least, and many others know, Øystein Holte, once coined the sentence that men in earlier times used to have a family, like they have a job, or they have a car, or they have a house. And they learned through decades that it's more important to be in a family, to be part of it, to be part of the lives of the others. And that's something which is like really, really important. And I think this is a kind of a revolution that was happening for decades in many countries, in many cultures, that men became aware that this is really important, that it matters to them as a father, but also as a human being that has to live a more healthy life. And what happened in Germany is that after women's movement started in the 70s, men somehow didn't feel affected the first time, but then they felt pushed to change, and then they changed slowly. First of all, in their attitudes, less in their practices. But when we thought about why don't change men in practice, it was all about the discourse of privilege. Yeah, why should men change? I mean, that's not for them. And then we saw, okay, men could have some benefits from this change. And the way, or the reasons why they didn't change wasn't completely up to them. And it was not only by their decision, but it has a lot to do with the role they play in companies, the role they play in work life. It's not easy to leave this traditional position. And some men were the icebreakers. In 2007, the laws on paternity leave or parental leave changed. And before this point in 2007, the number of men, the percentage of men, of fathers who took parental leave was 3.5%. Exodes, a small, very, very small group. Maybe icebreakers, maybe some men that showed, okay, it's okay to do this, but it was an episode, a very small group. Now the percentage is 33%. It's still, compared to Norway or the Nordic states, it's still ridiculously low. But for Germany, we have the feeling that it's kind of a small revolution that happened also in companies, because companies had to adopt with it. The superiors have to adopt with it. The departments have to adopt with men not being present all the time, being away 2, 3, or even more months. And this changes as well the attitude, as Victor pointed out, the attitude of fathers. If you are away for 2 months, and if you are present in your families, you live your life within this family, it changes your attitude, and it changes the demands you have. So this is something that happened in Germany. I think this is very important to notice.
Hvala lepa, če kar nadaljujemo. Jaz sem razmišljala ravno, ko sem se to poslušala, glede na časovni okvir, v katerem se gibljamo, je moj predlog, da naredimo tako, da v bistvu vsak dobi eno rundo vprašanj in potem odpremo takoj prostor za razpravo, in potem tudi v času odmora in ob koncu bo veliko priložnosti za pogovore. Gospod Tore Eugen Kvalheim, kako pa vi vidite vlogo delodajalcev, vlogo vodstva glede usklajevanja, upeljevanja ukrepov usklajevanja plačanega dela in družine, in predvsem, jaz bi se tu navezala še na v bistvu izkušnjo, norveško izkušnjo, ko je bil leta 2014 očetovski dopust skrajšan iz 14 tednov na 10 tednov. Takrat ste delodajalci in sindikati skupaj izrazili močno nasprotovanje temu. Tako da to bi vas prosila, če nam lahko malo več poveste o tem, ker namreč v Sloveniji se je zelo pogosto, da so pač sindikati in delodajalci so zelo redko na istem bregu. Kako pravzaprav tudi delodajalci nekako sprejmejo daljše odsotnosti moških, ki grejo na očetovski starševski dopust, namreč v Sloveniji se zdi teh 15 dni še sprejemljivo, kaj več je pa že težko zamisljivo. Na drugi strani je pa za ženske povsem pričakovano, da bodo po rojstvu otroka leto dni odsotne. Tako, prosim.
No, it's on. Okay, thank you for that important question. And first, let me point out that when it comes to business, especially in Norway, it is, and when it comes to business being father-friendly or taking serious the new father role or in workforce and at home, it's important to understand that business don't do this out of kindness. Business do this because, as you know the saying, it's the economy stupid. It makes better economy. It makes business possible to attract, as I said earlier in my introduction, the best out there in the market. If that's a girl or if it's a boy, it doesn't matter for modern business. So that's very important. We don't do this out of kindness. And then also, when we have some obstacles in Norway as well, of course we have. One of the discussions in Norway up to the last election, especially from the conservative parties, is that we come this long way in Norway that we don't need so many political. Well, we have to end this, as critics say, this state feminism. We have to leave this to the families themselves. And that's why we also on the employer side say, no, we can't leave this to the families themselves. Because if we leave it to the family themselves, we believe that fathers, for example, will take less paternity leave. That's a fact. If you have to negotiate on the workplace, no, I want to take 14 weeks, but the law only says 10, most men takes 10. If the law says 14, men takes 14. Statistics already show this from the last 2 years when it was reduced. So we need political measures to cope up with what to see the change. I think that's why also we in business see this is as important, and we have the same statement as the trade unions. When we say it's full paid paternity leave, that's not quite true. That's up to a level, of course. So if you have a very high income, we see that fathers don't stay at home as much, especially in some sectors, especially in law, in finance, migrants. That's maybe due to another factor, but nevertheless. So that's why we want the government to say that it's important for the fathers to take the paternity leave, and we see that companies are rather clever to adapt to new political policies in Norway. So in the last government, 2 of the ministers, the finance minister and 2 of the education minister themselves took out paternal leave to show that, as you mentioned earlier, to show that we need good role models, and then things start happening. Okay.
Najlepša hvala. Sonja Šmuc, v Združenju Menedžer, predvsem v bistvu v sekciji Menedžerk, delujete na področju spodbujanja ženskega menedžmenta. Kakšen pa je vaš pogled na prizadevanja za večjo vlogo moških pri skrbi za otroke, zlasti če gledamo iz vidika vodstev podjetij, ki tudi v Sloveniji v bistvu predstavljajo, so v veliko večji meri moški, ki pa so hkrati tudi očetje ali v kakršnihkoli drugih skrbstvenih vlogah. In a se vam zdi, da tudi v Sloveniji na ravni organizacij, na ravni podjetij, da je opaziti kakšne spremembe, ki gredo v smeri, rečemo temu, posameznicam bolj prijaznih organizacijskih kultur?
Mislim, da je izkušnja Slovenije z družini prijaznim podjetjem, certifikatom pokazala, da je eno razumevanje in ena želja po pomoči zaposlenim pri usklajevanju zasebnega in delovnega okolja. Tako da imamo kar precej dobrih primerov tega. Seveda pa to je zgodba, ki ni nikoli končana in je vedno lahko bolje in drugače. V poslu je vedno treba pogledati, kako na eni strani zagotavljaš uspešnost podjetja, ki je zelo povezano z produktivnostjo in takoj pomeni, če nekoga ni, pač tam ni produktivnosti. In po drugi strani tudi, ali lahko z bistveno bolj kvalitetnimi ljudmi in z visokim zadovoljstvom zaposlenih v podjetju dvignem to produktivnost. Torej gre za obe stvari in iskanje enega pametnega ravnovesja. Konec koncev tudi zaposleni hodijo v podjetje zato, da bodo lahko in izpolnjevali delno sami sebe, ampak tudi zato, da lahko plačaš položnice. In če je podjetje samo usmerjeno v zagotavljanje zelo prijetnega okolja, ki pa na koncu ne postreže z plačilom na koncu, najbrž ne bi bili tam zaposleni. Zato je to iskanje pravega ravnotežja tako pravzaprav pomembno. V Sloveniji zanimivo, da nekako po moji prosoji, po pregledovanju kar precej te literature in študija, se mi zdi, da imamo eno najboljših infrastruktur za karijere tako žensk kot moških. Na posameznih segmentih celo bolje kot Norveška, ponekod je Norveška bolje kot mi, ampak vendarle smo tam v špici. Če naštejem sam, zakaj recimo to utemeljujem. Naše omrežje, recimo že skrbstva za otroke, torej vrtci in šolski sistem, so nekaj, za kar bi recimo Nemci najbrž bili strahotno srečni, da bi imeli tak sistem zdaj, ko šele stopajo v te spremembe. Obdavčitev, ki je vezana na posameznika in ne na družino, je tudi eden od pomembnih elementov, ki zopet kaže, da družine se odločajo racionalno. In kadar je obdavčena družina in se splača, da nekdo dela manj, bo to praviloma ženska. Vsaj do zdaj je tako bilo. Morda se bojo začeli tudi te trendi spreminjati zaradi večje izobrazbe žensk in da bojo te prevzemale mogoče mesta, ki so bolje plačana, in potem bo pravzaprav ta val udaril nazaj, da bo nekdo v družini se moral odločiti, da bo zaradi tega, ker je sistem postavljen tako, delal manj, kot bi morda želel. Druge stvari recimo so tudi visoka zaposlenost žensk in moških, se pravi oboje, zaposlitev za polni delovni čas in moških in žensk. Skratka, imamo kar veliko teh stvari, ki so zelo zgledno urejene. Ker jaz bolj poznam zgodbo strani žensk, kot poznam strani moških, in zato me je ta konferenca danes izjemno dobrodošla. Ampak to sta vedno dve plati istega kovanca. Lahko vidimo, da je Slovenija tudi skozi svojo preteklo zgodovino uspela priti kar precej visoko na področju spolne enakosti, pa to še vedno ni dovolj in še vedno ni dobro. Mislim, samo v primerjavi z mogoče kakšnimi drugimi državami smo boljši, ampak povsod je zadeva skromna. Ampak ko govorimo o tem, da je spolna enakost, oziroma enakost med spoloma v Sloveniji sorazmerno visoka, govorimo o enakosti in moških in žensk. Večinoma gledamo z vidika žensk, ki osvajajo nek nov teritorij in včasih je pogledano strani, da se pa moški kot umikajo, ampak pravzaprav mislim, da je bilo prej izjemno lepo prikazano, da gre za redefinicijo, kaj pomeni spolna enakost in kako spolna enakost pravzaprav pomeni spoštovanje posameznika kot posameznika. In da tako kot so bile ženske skozi zgodovino ujete v eno etiketo, so bili ravno tako tudi moški ujeti v eno zgodbo, ki je bila za njih predvidena. In moški, ki so iz te zgodbe izstopali, so bili morda še bolj šikanirani ali pa stigmatizirani kot morda ženske, ki so izstopale iz svojih okvirjev. In umik teh zelo predvidljivih družbenih predstav, kaj pomeni biti dobra, uspešna ženska, kaj pomeni biti dober, uspešen moški, nas morda sili, da v bistvu ne delamo ravno to, kar bi bilo za nas najbolje. In če to pomeni pri moških krajša življenjska doba, če pomeni pri moških biti zaprt čustveno, če pomeni pri ženskah biti preobremenjena na drugi strani, to najbrž ni v kontekstu kakovostnega življenja. Kaj lahko podjetja pri tem naredijo? Pravzaprav kar precej. Ampak morda bi podelila eno drugo zgodbo. Če smo se že navadili, tako kot ste rekli, da smo ženske, ko postanemo mamice, pravzaprav 1 leto odsotne in so se podjetja navadila na to. To je nekaj, kar je v bistvu že se lahko načrtuje in se predvideva. Je pa zanimivo, da ko govorimo pa o možni odsotnosti moških, bodo pa tudi ženske proti. Zato, ker to zopet stanje, na katero nismo navajeni in je del procesa. Je treba videti, da tudi to lahko se ravno tako načrtuje. Moja, recimo zanimivo se mi je zdela zgodba, ko se je skušalo, se pravi, povečati delež očetovskega dopusta. Kolegice z ministrstva so si v bistvu za to prizadevale in ta en plaz upora proti vzeti mamam mesec in ga dati očetom, me sproži vprašanje, ali je porodniška oziroma skrb za otroka pravica matere ali pravica otroka. In če je pravica otroka, ima otrok najbrž pravico tako do mame kot do očeta. Ne samo, da je to nekaj, s čimer se ženske v bistvu tako močno identificiramo in tega ne spustimo iz rok. In če to ne spustimo iz rok, potem bomo tudi težko rekli, da smo tako preobremenjene, ker same ustvarjamo okoliščine, v katerih držimo tisto ognjišče, da je to naše. In če ne spustimo moških zraven tudi same, tudi oni sami ne bojo zraven prišli. In zato se mi zdijo te pobude, ki so vezane na odpiranje družinskih zavor, na večje vključevanje očetov v družinsko življenje, skozi, tako kot je bilo rečeno, prva taka prelomnica je prisotnost ob rojstvu in potem tudi z drugimi politikami, ko taki moški niso stigmatizirani, ampak vzamejo nekaj, kar je družba omogočila, sproščamo in spreminjamo tudi razmerja med nami.
Najlepša hvala. Jaz odpiram razpravo, glede na to, da nas čas priganja. Mislim, da je čutiti energijo, brbotanje, tako da prosim za vprašanja, ideje, komentarje, predloge.
Lepo pozdravljeni, Matjaž Florjanc Lukan, Ministrstvo za zunanje zadeve. Jaz bi se navezal na gospo Šmuc, strokovnjakinjo ženskega menedžmenta. In sicer to, kar ste zdaj sprožili, v bistvu je v meni sprožljeno vprašanje oziroma eno razmišljanje. Ženske ne damo tega, ne? To v bistvu se je zdaj začelo dogajati, da v bistvu ne gre samo za partnerski odnos ženske, moški. To se je začelo dogajati tudi v službah. Moški, ki izrazijo željo, da bi radi bili odsotni zaradi večje vloge v družini, dobijo odpor šefic, karieristk, ki v bistvu niso pripravljene tega sprejeti na poslovnem odnosu. In v bistvu je to tak, bom rekel, močno šikaniranje, da v bistvu se včasih moški zaradi tega ustrašijo in stopijo nazaj, ne. Z ženskami imajo doma, z ženami imajo doma razmerje urejeno, jim je to pomembno, potem pa v službi naletijo na to, kar pa sploh ne morejo dojeti, ker moški na primer v službi ne predstavljajo grožnjo očetom, grožnjo zdaj predstavljajo res močne, karieristične ženske, ki v bistvu stopajo en korak naprej in to je to, kar ste v bistvu vi zdaj rekli, ne damo tega, ne, ker je to naše. In tukaj jaz ne vem, kaj lahko v bistvu delodajalci tukaj v bistvu naredijo en korak temu, oziroma če imate kak dober recept, na kak način v bistvu omiliti zdaj to moje, naše, ker je v bistvu tukaj zdaj mislim, da tisti okvir, oziroma tukaj ste rekli, včasih je veljalo, da če je ženska šla na porodniški dopust, ne, so ženske pa same, ko so prišle nazaj, se včasih kar počutile zgubljene, ko so bile nekako odrinjene en čas ven. Zdaj pa v bistvu to pri moškem se dogaja, če to gre, je nekako odrinjen, nima tiste vloge, ki jo je imel, ko se vrača nazaj. Tako da, če je kakšen dober recept, se priporočam. Hvala.
Možni sta morda dve razlagi za tako ravnanje. Eno je to, ki ste ga opisali, ne, morda, da si tudi ženske težko predstavljajo, da bodo tudi moški odšli. Drugi je pa lahko zelo praktičen. Ko si v vlogi šefa, menedžerja, imaš ponavadi tudi neke strategije, kako ravnati v, ne vem, kriznih ali pa tveganih situacijah. In nekdo, da ti odide iz tima, je ena od tveganih situacij. In ker smo, recimo, da pripravljeni, bolj kot ne, da bodo če otroci zbolijo, pretežno odhajale ženske, ne pa samo, ampak pretežno, da grejo na porodniško, pretežno ženske, je to en del obvladovanja tveganj, ki je že vnešen v organizacijo. Medtem ko nismo pa pripravljeni, po moje, v podjetjih na to, da pa tudi moški lahko odidejo. Ker pomeni, da je to en segment, ki ga morajo podjetja znati oddelati. In da je prej tak odziv iz neke frustracije, ko ne veš, aha, za kolegico vem, kako lahko nadomestimo, za kolega pa ne vem, ker to še nismo sprobali in je to tista prvinska reakcija, ki je nek tak odpor. Mislim pa, da z večjim in večjim pojavom moških, ki bodo tudi odšli in skrbeli za otroke, ko zbolijo, ali odšli na porodniški dopust, ali kakorkoli drugače želeli biti močneje vključeni v družino, da bo to tudi postalo nekaj normalnega. Ampak da smo na začetku recimo nekega procesa, kjer bojo taki trenutki pač, ja, del spremembe.
Metka Roksandič, ženski lobi Slovenije. Mene nekaj zanima, nagovarjam predvsem vse tri. Slovenija ima že od 70 let porodniško oziroma od 84 enoletno in možnost, da partnerja, torej oče in mati, sama odločita prostovoljno, kdo bo tistih 250 dni po porodniški vzel ta dopust za njegov otroka. Po 35 letih je rezultat ta, da je prej vzelo približno 1,5% očetov nego in varstvo otroka, zdaj pa približno 7%, več kot 30 let je vmes. Zdaj me pa zanima, ali je možno razmišljati, ker to, kar imajo nekatere države, v bistvu, da je ta neprenosljivi, je v bistvu neke vrste kvota. Ti imaš v porodniškem ali pa v negi 2-3 mesece kvote, ki jo lahko izkoristi samo oče ali pa če pa ne, pa propade. Ali je možno razmišljati, to smo uvedli v politiki, vsaj v Sloveniji je to bilo 10-krat bolj uspešno, torej neka blaga prisila, ali boš vzel ali pa bo zadeva propadla. Ali je možno razmišljati in glede na to, da vi nekateri imate to, uspešnost, dobro, eno je marketinški pristop, kako zadevo prikazati, drugo pa je, ali je takšna ne samo svobodna volja partnerjev, torej da ti preneseš odločitev izključ s partnerjev tudi na koga drugega, torej na državo, na to, da ustvari pogoje, da se lahko ta odločita, ali je to možno razmišljati tudi pri nas oziroma v drugih državah?
Hvala lepa. Jaz bi mogoče k temu samo dodala, res je, starševski dopust teh 9 mesecev, imamo res že 40 let, obstaja v Sloveniji, kjer si torej partner lahko delita in res tudi doktorica Nada Stropnik je med nami, ki je velika strokovnjakinja prav za to področje, mogoče boste kaj dodali. To, kar se meni zdi zanimivo, je to, da je pravzaprav tam do leta 2000 je bil ta delež očetov, ki so koristili en del starševskega dopusta, se res gibal tam tudi pod 1% je šel, pa potem med 1 do 2, ampak potem od leta 2000 do 2016 se je pa zgodil ta porast. Skratka, mogoče lahko razmišljamo tudi v tej smeri, da z uvedbo očetovskega dopusta, da se je mogoče posledično tudi delež očetov, ki vzamejo del starševskega dopusta, začel povečevati. Možno. Skratka, zdaj pa prosim, prepuščam še govorcema in govorki.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we had the similar experience in Germany. We had like 3.5, as I pointed out. What helped was to, I don't know how the compensation is and was before in Slovenia. That might be very much dependent to this. But what happened in Germany is before 2006 there was a fixed sum that was paid as compensation, ridiculously low. I think it was 300 euros. And what happened then is that mothers took it, mostly mothers. I mean, in West Germany, I'm coming from a very conservative country called West Germany. It doesn't exist anymore as such, but the culture still prevailed in the West, with a low percentage of female employment, much lower than the East, as we know, women co-earners, and of course they took this small money additionally to the higher wages of the husbands. What changed in 2007 was that the compensation was now referring to the net income, still for some ridiculously low, 65%, 64. But it worked also for the men, so it was much more now, and that was something that was definitely really important. And there is sometimes there is a myth, something that is not really accurate when talking about Germany. Many think that in Germany the partners can take the fathers can take 2 or 3 months. It was introduced like, okay, now we have 2 partner months, additionally to the 12 months that are the basis of it. But it's 14 for both, and they can decide how to share it. It can be 12 for the father, 6 for the father, or for 6 for the father and 8 for the mother, 7 for both. The normal situation is 2 for the father, 12 for the mother, or a bit more. Statistically, it's a bit less than 3 months. Which of course has to do with the wage gap. And the wage gap in Germany, as you know, is especially high. It's about 23%, the gender pay gap. What we see as a situation is that in parts of the country where the incomes are really low, also men's incomes, and unemployment is quite high, for example, in the northwest of the country, fathers' take-up of parental leave is especially low. And it's very high in regions where the net income of both partners is relatively high in the south. So I think there are a couple of things that are working together. So the net income, the similarity of the net income or relative equality. And inequality is bad for the situation for take-up of fathers. And of course, yeah, the compensation is really crucial.
Okay. Also in Norway, we have one fixed period for the mother, and of course, as I told you, one period for the paternity leave for the father, and we have this period in the middle, which one can choose. Of course, most women are taking use of the maternity leave for this period, but it has something to do with income, as you say. I don't have the percentage, but it has more men are taking part of that period after the paternal leave were introduced in 1933. When I say it has something to do with the income, I can use myself as an example. When we have our first child in 1999, it happens then that my wife had a higher income than me. That's not that unusual in Norway. So she expected me to take part of the maternal leave as well. So she could go back, and she was self-employed also, so she would lose her income if she couldn't go back to work. So I had to take more part of that. And that's becoming more and more common in Norway. And I also want to add to the first question that I recognize from the Norwegian debate this thing about reluctance when the paternal leave was introduced. But it have been reduced through the 20 years, and today that's not an obstacle we meet so much as we used to. I remember when our first children were in kindergarten, when we had to pick him up because he hurt his teeth at the kindergarten, and the teacher called me instead of the mother. And she was kind of surprised when we come home. Why did she call you? Shouldn't she call me? So it takes time to change this attitude in Norway as well, but we are on the way. Thank you.
I have a similar experience that teachers tend to call my husband instead of me, and I feel very hurt because of that. But I also know they're doing the smart thing anyway. If I keep it in English so that it's faster, I think that there are four trends that speak in favor of keeping political measures along with generational trends that are changing. And unless we have these political measures that are in there, it's so much more, the change will happen, but it will be so much more difficult and slower. And those four are, one is the masculinity that we've been talking about. So how do men feel about themselves? And if they know that they'll be somehow swimming against the tide, then that's much more difficult than you are in the tide. The other is motherhood, which we also talked. Also, women, we tend to feel ourselves as a heart of the family. So we also would like more of this space and maybe not give it that much to our partners. Then we also talked about the financial view, the compensation, which is also one part of the equation. And the fourth, which is also not that unimportant, is how does the company see your commitment to the company? And if you're taking things that you shouldn't have to, that you're not obliged to take, you can, but you're not obliged to, then it's in a way like saying, I care more about my family than I care more about the work. And in the workplace, although we tend to accept and know what are the needs of the employees, still in that workplace you would like to know that, okay, job comes first. You know, and so when you have a measure, then it's easier. It's not like I'm not liking where I work, and I'm just taking what I have to, otherwise it will, you know, go away. So that's a rational behavior, which again is acceptable by the company's environment. But the companies need to know that they can really rely on you. And if you go and do something that is not that much expected, then it starts thinking, oh, what can the next move be? Can we really rely on this person? Should we promote that person? But if you just take what is there in the law, then it means everybody can take that, and everybody probably will take that. So it's easier to be successful and also use the possibilities that are there. So that's where I think that the quotas part probably is the faster way of change.
Hvala lepa. Glede na to, da je počasi čas za odmor, bi vzeli še eno vprašanje. Potem pa med odmorom, seveda ob kavi, pri griskih bo tudi priložnost. Prosim. Sonja?
To pravzaprav ni vprašanje, pa je bolj komentar. V čem je problem? Jaz mislim, da se tukaj pogovarjamo, kot da živimo v prosperiteti in v času, ko je globalni konsens veljal, da so človekove pravice, nedeljive človekove pravice za moške in ženske, paradigma, po kateri bomo gradili življenje v prihodnosti. To se je zgodilo tam v sredi 90-ih, ta globalni konsens, nikoli se ni v celoti izvajal, zdaj je pa vsak dan manjši. In seveda ne živimo več v svetu, kjer bi delodajalci z veseljem sprejemali te spremembe, razen, tako kot je rekel naš kolega iz Norveške, ker je to smart economy. Ampak smart economy ni za njih. Če so te pravice za vse, tudi za tiste, ki so replaceable, ki jih je mogoče nadomestiti. In tako imamo vedno več podjetij, v katerih se dobro skrbi za kadre, ki prinašajo profit, in se zmeram slabše in slabše skrbi za ljudi, ki tega ne morejo in ki jih je mogoče nadomestiti. In zato mislim, da kadar delamo kakršnekoli družbene mehanizme, ki naj bi uravnali to ravnovesje, moramo misliti na to, kako preprečevati razslojevanje med delavce, ki so zavarovani, in tisti, ki so prekarni, in tisti, ki so na črnem trgu, in migranti in tako dalje. Če tega ne bomo zajeli, bomo sicer dobili lepo življenje za manjšino in strahotno slabo življenje za večino. In to je, mislim, zelo važna stvar, da moramo na to, o tem premišljati.
Thank you, and thank you also for this comment. I also think we are living in times where all the issues that we have been working on the last, some maybe the last 40 years, me myself in the last 15 years, they are really endangered. You mentioned the economic situation, cutbacks, etc. This is very important directly because it influences the welfare system, it influences incomes. Labor got cheaper and cheaper, and that's a bad situation for those who depend on income. That's a high number of persons. I belong to this as well. And indirectly, it had a big impact on societies and the political thinking. I think we live in times when, I mean, in Germany now we have a very successful right-wing party that wants to cut back everything that happens to start with gender. Gender is a non-word in German. It's something, I mean, they want basically to go back to the 1950s, some maybe also to the 1930s. So that's really a situation we face in many countries. I mean, next year maybe the next president of France will be called Marine Le Pen. So that's a dangerous situation we're facing at the moment in terms of racism, but also gender equality. So this has also, I think I link this very much also to neoliberal cutbacks that make people think of, okay, I have to be more aggressive to survive, and aggressive means aggressive to the others, keep refugees out and compete even more on the labor markets, and it is very much combined, I think, with traditional masculinities that are not very much pro-equality. But still, I think, I mean, I wouldn't blame the companies too much, because I have been working together with a lot of companies and big companies like Deutsche Bahn, the railway networks, and Deutsche Telekom. And within these companies, I think they very much rely on global markets. They have to think of diversity. I don't think, even with the right-wing government, they will cut back everything that is pro-diversity and pro-equality. Because as Tore pointed out, and many here know this, if we educate without any respect to gender, without any respect to sexual orientation or to the color of the skin, it would be really stupid not to promote these people we educated well. Women, homosexuals, or non-heterosexuals, people from other cultures. So we have to kind of let them in. That's the logic of capitalism as well. I mean, capitalism has different logics, and one doesn't respect to the old patterns of society, the old inequalities. So we don't have to rely on this. I mean, it's a constant fight for this. But I think we should not say, okay, the companies might be our enemies. I think we have to to work together with those people within the companies and the actors networks that still exist in many companies, to support this idea of diversity, gender equality, and also work-life balance. Thank you.
Najlepša hvala. Torej bi mogoče še vi kaj čisto na kratko, če bi karkoli dodali. Sonja? Ja? Na kratko, ker mislim, da je že čas počas za odmor, glede na...
Well, then I suggest we take a break. Thank you.
Yeah. No, you can say a sentence.
Sorry, but the woman has to have a last word, so you know, I'll still take it. Jaz bi samo še na eno zadevo morda izpostavila, ki se nismo dotikali. V glavnem smo govorili danes o vidiku moških kot očetov. Vendar pa so moški tudi možovi ali pa partnerji. Ne? In še vedno obstaja ta velika razlika v neplačanem delu med ženskami in moškimi in to pa ni popolnoma nič odvisno od korporacij in od podjetij, ampak je od tega, kako drug drugega spoštujemo v naših partnerskih zvezah. Iz raziskav iz leta 2012, ki sicer ima podatke nekoliko starejšega zajema, izhaja recimo, da v Sloveniji je ta razlika, ta delta, ne, da ženske približno 11 ur več na teden vložimo v neplačano delo. Povečuje se delež moških, ki ga v bistvu vzamejo nase, vendar je ta sprememba vezana predvsem na ukvarjanje z otroki, ne pa toliko na ukvarjanje z gospodinjskimi deli. Ne. Ob tem bi samo pa dodala, da je v Ameriki bila narejena študija tistih zakonskih parov, ki so bili res močni in so zelo dolgo zdržali in se je izkazalo, da je ravno ta delitev tudi teh neprijetnega vidika družinskega življenja, ki pomeni kuhanje, pranje, likanje in odnašanje smeti, ne, tam, kjer sta si to partnerja delila, je bilo ta partnerska zveza tudi bistveno močnejša, ker je iz te delitve neprijetnih vidikov izhajalo tudi spoštovanje drug drugega. In potem je bilo tudi spolno življenje mnogo boljše teh parov. Skratka, se splača v vseh ozirih biti enakopraven.